Welcome back to Zekism. So, Fantastic Four First Steps is out. It's in cinemas. I saw the film earlier today, so I'm going to give you my thoughts and takes on it. If you like what I do on this channel, please leave me a like and subscribe, or leave a comment in this comment section below as well. And stay tuned for more content around sort of comic books, but films and TV in general. I like to cover all sorts of things on this channel. Anyway, back to Fantastic Four First Steps. Reportedly had a budget of around over $200 million. That's not surprising, that's pretty standard. And you can probably see it on screen properly on this film. Directed by Matt Shakman, famous predominantly for Fargo and especially WandaVision. And I think that's what may have highlighted. I think Kevin Feige said his idea for the Fantastic Four spawned from this, so hence he got the job. He did a really good job directing this film, in my opinion. So, thoughts. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it, actually. I think the film, I think the first act opens with a more introductory, so very similar to Superman, actually, where it opens sort of throwing you into the universe and just sort of, I think this film does a bit more hand-holding than Superman did, but opens up with, sort of you're introduced in separate universe to what we've currently known as the Marvel MCU timeline. And in Universe 828 is specifically. And I really enjoyed it. I think the first act opens with, like I said, that introductory bit, and then the second act gets into more of the drama and the threat, and then the third act is all hell breaks loose. So we'll start from the top, I guess, with the basic outline of the plot. It makes more sense, doesn't it? So, like I said, not a lot of origin context needed. I think we're all familiar with who the Fantastic Four is. Seen a lot of comparisons with the Incredibles, which is really ironic for me because where do you think the Incredibles were based off of? For better or for worse, depending on your taste, like I said, Superman did it as well, where they just throw you into the world. Far less jarring here. There is sort of an introductory video package at the beginning of the film that sort of, briefly shows the incident that gave them the powers, and then you're off to the races after that. But you're just here in this world, and you have to sort of accept that this team is just here and ready, willing to save everyone and everything, whilst technologically pushing this civilization forward, which is, 60s inspired. So you've got a lot of Jetson style retrofuturism. It's been widely reported and widely commented about, but stunning visuals from that point of view. Really good set designs and imaginative world building. And so the film starts with, like I said, that introductory video, and we'll come back to the idealistic world that they inhabit as a result of them existing, and we'll come back to that. But after Sue and Reed discover they're having a baby, that's pretty much the beginning of the film. We then see the team operating, haven't seen some more of the team dynamics, and then Silver Surfer arrives on Earth to warn the inhabitants that their planet will be devoured by an existential threat named Galactus. The team attempt to then travel to Galactus' ship more so, and to negotiate with him to stop him destroying Earth basically in this world. And he says, well, he'll spare the world if they give him their unborn child, for which they refuse. And then from then on, it's full steam ahead. I think that's a pretty brief synopsis of the film, the plot, the stakes, and the stakes are very high. So I'll dovetail into that. I'm going to shout out the look of the film, because I think that's what a lot of people probably will comment on. It looks really good. The CGI in parts, for the most part, work. I think they've invested a lot of money and a lot of time in it, and you can see it on screen. The other thing is the sets, the real life sets built at Pinewood Studios here in the UK, I believe. Really good, really, it's a really good looking film. I don't know, that's sort of dampening it with great praise, because for that money that they've invested, you'd expect it to. But as we've seen with previous MCU installments, that isn't the case always. Silver Surfer, The Thing, and Johnny Storm in particular, the flame effects are the obvious standouts, and sort of mixing the effects with real built sets such as Times Square and the Baxter Building interiors look really good. A lot of time and effort. It reminds me of the TVA a bit in terms of the set designs. That sort of old school looking machines and early computers. But it works, it really works, and it makes this film, I think, stand out amongst all the other MCU entries, and I think they did a really good job with that. I know this may be a hot take as well, because hardcore Silver Surfers are not happy about the interpretation that's been used in this film, or I've seen that sort of comment online. I'm not a massive Silver Surfer fan in general, to be honest, so that didn't really bother me. But I've never really cared about the character anyway in any of the other things I've seen Silver Surfer pop up in. It's a character that never really gelled with me whatsoever. But I will say, this Silver Surfer is cool as hell. I love her delivery of her lines. I think Julia Garner. Her twisted speech sounds, it's menacing and eerie, but soft and sort of mournful as well. Really effective. I thought it was really effective anyway. I've dovetailed to the Silver Surfer, but we'll go to the team in general. We'll talk about the big headline act, and I think this is probably a proper ensemble film, to be fair, with the Fantastic Four, but obviously Pedro Pascal is probably the biggest name in the film. I did make a video earlier on this year where I was questioning his casting in this, in addition to him not helping to promote the film with some of the comments and things he said. So I thought I wouldn't be able to forget all of that and buy him as Reed anyway, partly because he's in so many things anyway, and I think there is quite a Pedro fatigue going on. I think that's been again widely commented upon, and I thought that was gonna affect me watching the film as well. But actually, I thought he was really good. I thought he really did lose himself slightly in the role. It's not dramatically different from seeing him in Gladiator 2, for example, or seeing him in anything else he's in. But I think his voice did sound a little bit different to me. I think he was doing something different. Combined with the fact, I actually think it's a pretty faithful adaptation for my part. I think people may disagree with this. I think it's a pretty faithful Reed Richards. If you've ever read Reed in the comics, he's very, very sort of anally retentive about process and obviously building technological marvels. And always push forward, but that sort of machine-like analytical side almost forgets the human side of things, and that's where he clashes with members of the team and other members of the Marvel Universe and stuff. And in this, I think there was a lot being done in that direction from obviously Matt Shakman, but obviously Pedro was doing a good job, I think, playing a Reed Richards that was pretty faithful. I think he's about 60-70% there from that read from the comics. Why do I keep saying that? But it may sound like dampening with faint praise, but I thought he was good, and I liked his inability to not be able to rationalize everything his ability to not be able to rationalize everything in a technical way. And Sue and him clash a couple of times during the film because he's trying to work out what not to do, but obviously. And we've all been in this situation where we've said the thing that's in our heads maybe before we've thought about how to say it out loud in a more comforting or delicate way. There's a couple of moments of that in the film. Speaking of Sue, there's been a bit of controversy, I think, about Sue. I think I saw 2 or 3 weeks ago people or some outlets online were reporting, I got to stop looking at online outlets, I think is more of the story, saying that this was the Sue Storm show, that it was an overbearing female character that was going to dominate the film, akin to maybe a couple of characters that Marvel have done, and it's further evidence of MCU and all this other stuff. I didn't get that feel whatsoever watching the film. I really didn't. I think she was presented obviously as a strong female character. She is the mother of the team and obviously becomes a literal mother during the film, but that wasn't overbearing for me. I know lots of mothers in my life that reminded me of them. I think the parts where she got aggressive were the parts where she was stringently defending her child, and that's very relatable in my books. I didn't see that as a problem whatsoever. So if anyone's reporting that, I really would stress and disagree with that fundamentally. She's a valued part of the team. I don't think she's overpowered. I don't think she dominates conversations during the film or is seen as more than. I think some people are reporting that she leans on a political side. There's like one scene where that happens, maybe two, but it's very rare. And she's almost like the peacekeeper, which is very faithful to the comics. So I think I would push back on that as well. We'll go to The Thing, Ebba Moss-Bachrach. He's pretty good. I think I've seen, again, complaints that his voice isn't gruff enough, because that's how people imagined he would talk. But I dug his voice. I think his confident, sort of softly spoken New York, I'm going to assume, accent. He's a very charismatic actor anyway. Anyone who's seen an episode of The Bear would testament to that. But if you've seen him in interviews, he's very cool, he's very calm, he's very collected. That worked for me. I think it worked for me in seeing the big rock thing body with quite a chill dude voice coming out of it. I think that worked for me. And I might have a similar comment when it comes to Galactus, but I would have liked to see more of him in this film. I think he what we saw is good, and I liked his sort of, again, his dynamics with Johnny, Human Torch, but that was probably about it. There's a couple of moments with him and Reed where they sort of touch upon their friendship, but I never really bought that. There's probably a cut of this film somewhere with more of him in it, and I'll tell you why. They sort of start leaning or egging towards his sort of, his tragic arc, where he's sad about obviously being a rock monster now, and they sort of skirt around his affliction before moving on with the story, because that's the most important thing. And it's not necessarily a bad move to do that, because obviously it's an affliction, it's a part of his character, and if anyone's seen a Fantastic Four film or read one of the comics, that's a big part of, and something that comes up quite regularly. But in this film, it's sort of touched upon and not delved into, but they want to circle back to it, and I'm like, I think something's got lost in the cutting room floor would be my assumption, and it may be just a personal thing, but I would have not included him looking mournfully or sorrowfully in the TV shop window at what he used to look like, and then never return to it. You know what I mean? So that's all I'm saying on that. As for Johnny, Joseph Quinn plays Johnny pretty well. There's nothing really much to move on to that. I think he has the biggest laughs in the film, and I think his dynamic with The Thing, like I said, is probably the most consistently comedic, because obviously they're bantering off each other pretty much throughout the whole film. But when, shit hits the fan, they team up and they're able to work together, because they're essentially brothers. That's where they sort of their relationship stems from. Brothers who take the mick out of one another, and yeah. I think if you're going to see this film, one thing I think is important to bear in mind personally when watching the film, and this may just be a me thing rather than an absolute thing, but I haven't seen many people comment on this. I think it's incredibly important to bear in mind when watching the film, and to not forget that this world is a different world that they inhabit, rather than the usual or realistic sort of related to our modern world or the traditional MCU timeline world. This world is an idealistic world. It's what Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, I believe, wanted the world to be. Very full of hope and optimism and trust, and so when this, like I said, as an idealistic world, the population are based in a world of wonder and excitement and full support of and belief in the Fantastic Four that they will always win the day. And so if you go into the film expecting that, or putting real world expectations or believability in their actions or their moods or the behaviours from the general public anyway, then you may be saying, well, I wouldn't be saying that or behaving like that when stuff happens. And that shows, I think one thing that shows trust in the audience, obviously, to just get over that and move on. But I think the sorry for the pun, but it's a bit fantastical for people to buy into, possibly. You'd be able to sort of shrug that off a little bit. Previous Marvel and DC films have placed the superheroes in the modern day and a sort of I don't want to say depressing nature, but it was like, what would it be like if superheroes lived in the real world? Well, this isn't that whatsoever, because there wouldn't be CNN probes or questions. That world is not this one. This world is like, Fantastic Four are great, and we trust them, and everything's going to be just fine, even when it looks like all hope is lost. They're still fully behind, or more or less fully behind the team. So I think that may jar a few people, especially when, like I said, the bargain is presented to Earth like he wanted our child, and obviously we gave him up. We told him to go shove it. That may be a point of contention or a bone of contention with people going, well, would you be cool with that? Or should we have seen more sort of rioting scenes? Or I don't know. That's just a personal thing, though. But in my opinion, not that you need to compare them, I think this is a definitely better film than Superman, in my opinion. Not just because I'm a Marvel shill, and that may be checker in my opinion, but I don't think it is. I think the script is tighter. I think it's much more focused, I think, for the characters and on the events that happen. It doesn't just randomly spiral off, I don't say out of control, because I did like Superman. I think James Gunn did a good job with it. But there was random cuts, and traditionally this is what Marvel does. Random cuts and random jokes and random sort of happenings which take away from the story or have been ill-placed to basically ruin the drama that's going on. The threat is heavy. You've got to feel that weight, and the characters have to believably be reacting to those events happening. And I think too often, especially in Marvel, and I'm not just going to rag on DC, Marvel, that happens at all. That happens all the time, where they sort of make a joke when the world's ending, and you just think you wouldn't do that in that situation. It's really hard to sort of disbelieve. This film does a much better job of having jokes, but in the moments where it's applicable. When Galactus is trying to steal the baby, there's no one making a joke. You know what I mean? So it's that sort of thing. I'm going to mention also another cast member who I haven't mentioned so far is Natasha Lyonne. This is another slight that I had. I think she's really great. I love Natasha Lyonne. I think she's funny, she's charismatic, she can really act if you've seen Orange is the New Black. And she's very unique a personality. If you've seen her in interviews, she's such an interesting performer. So don't hope for seeing much of her in this film, because it is really a blink and you'll miss her role. Her total screen time, not word of a lie, might be about 30 seconds across about 2 scenes. So I think when I'm referring to Ben Grimm and the Thing's arc, there is probably more on the cutting room floor with fleshing out his story that I referred to earlier about the tragedy of his physical appearance. So I would expect deleted scenes to support this theory, maybe when the film's all said and done and out. But my thought is, the thought stems from if you needed, because you obviously needed a Jewish actress to play this role, because it's very prominently, obviously Ben Grimm's Jewish, and you needed a Jewish actress to work in the place where she works in the film and all that sort of stuff. Why get someone so high profile? And it touches on the John Malkovich issue a little bit here, methinks, as well. They were just getting names in the film and maybe obviously paying them a lot of money to just come in, do not very much, and then leave again. But it does leave you scratching your head a little bit, or it did me, but that's maybe just me. So overall, I think a really entertaining film, and due to me being a parent as well, that does pull on the heartstrings a lot, especially when the sort of the child's in peril, and the theme is so gut wrenching when it comes to a parent. Imagine you were presented with that offer, and I think they do a really good job of telling that story. The humor is good, like I said. The cast is really good. I think they're really well cast, the 4 of them. They have really great chemistry, and the performances are really what I'll remember coming away from the film from, as well as individual scenes. The action's great, and the villain is really menacing. Galactus, Ralph Ineson, does a really good job, I think, with the few scenes, lines of dialogue he does have. But the presentation of Galactus, I thought, was really well done. The music, I'll shout out the score as well, by Michael Giacchino. I think it's a really sort of different theme, obviously 60s inspired, but very sort of memorable. You remember I sung it on a video the other day and made myself look an idiot, but you remember that theme song, definitely. But I would be lying if I said I didn't hope for a little bit more from it after having watched it, but maybe that's because I hyped myself up a little bit too much. Nevertheless, definitely a really good film, and I left the cinema wanting to see more of these characters in future adventures or future Doomsdays. Wink. Just a note, there is a pointed nod at the end to Jack Kirby at the end of the credits, and that was really great to see how influential he was to, especially this family of heroes, but all the cosmic and galactic premises that not only they found themselves, but other characters within Marvel. He was responsible for a lot of the stories that we see today from these and other heroes. Shout out to DC as well. So it was a classy nod, and I think that's one they should probably do more of. More shout outs and more links to the past creators, not just Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, the big two, the other comic creators who do have really written these stories ready-made and tailored for the films to then come in and incorporate them and adopt them essentially for a mainstream audience. So yeah, like I said, it was classy. I'd like to see more of that. Just to mention the post-credit as well, a guide to your post-credits. Stay for the first one. You don't necessarily need to stay for the second one unless you want sort of a retro Fantastic Four cartoon nod. Not that I'm spoiling it, but that's what it is. The first one, mid-credit scene, just after everyone's, the actors' names are on there. That's pretty important to stay for future reference. You're welcome, LOL. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the film. What did you think? Are you going this week? Do you even care? Are you out of Marvel? Are you in on Marvel? Are you hyped for the future of Marvel? I certainly am. Hopefully you are too. Leave me a comment in the comment section below if you agree or disagree with that. Leave me a like and subscribe on the channel. I'd love to grow this channel if I can and start being able to invest in doing more. But that relies on support. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, listening and engaging. That really is... honestly really delights me that when I see people watch it, it's really pleasing. So yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye bye.